everybody, we are doing arrow builds today. This video is for the ladies, or maybe someone with a lower poundage. Maybe you have a kid who has a 40 to 50 pound draw and you're just trying to find a setup that works for them. I do have previous bow and arrow build videos on my channel, but this year I'm switching it up a little bit, trying something new. I love to experiment, so this is just one of those times where I'm just messing around, seeing what's, cool, what I like, what I, want to tinker with, and some things I leave the same, but I definitely like to mess around with different components, different arrows, different setups. So the biggest reason is I think it's fun, but I also work so closely with Corbin's archery that he allows me to be able to kind of mess with different things, because it does get expensive. But I feel like if I can mess around and have the chance to do it, I like to share those things with you guys, because I really want you to be able to find a setup that works for you and helps you be successful without having to break the bank and do all of the experimenting yourself. So with that said, we're gonna build some arrows today, and these are arrows that I actually built yesterday. They are more so gonna be my practice arrows. This exact setup is what it's gonna end up being, except the colors are a little off. They don't quite match my bow, so I want to do some colors that match. I know these are good, these are great. I did my actual bow build yesterday, so I needed a few arrows just to do the bow build. So these are kind of just gonna be practice, but I will be doing prettier ones today. So we're gonna get into it and hopefully you find some information that's helpful here. All right, this is what we're working with today. And I'll give you guys a little sneak peek of my string colors, so that way you can see what we're matching to. We just have fluorescent orange and fluorescent purple kind of twisted together. And I did basically the same combo last year, except I did a twist on everything, and I think it turned out a little more pink. And I had different strings also. So these are the match bow strings from Matthews, and I decided anywhere that there was serving or real thick, coloration, I wanted to just do a solid color. So if you do decide to do a twist of any sort, just be cautious. It may change how it looks. So anywhere you have serving, I just did right here I did orange, down here I did just purple. So just as a little note if you guys decide to do these colors. Okay, so this leads me to wraps, and these are the ones that I did obviously on the practice arrows, but blue unfortunately does not match my colors, and I'm pretty picky about that. So I have my own that I got a sample of from the same brand. Everything's the same, just with my logo, and it's a gradient of purple to orange, which I think turned out pretty cool. So I might actually sell these if you guys would be interested in them. I don't know. I really haven't thought that far ahead. I just wanted some for my own arrows, but I think they look pretty nice. So the biggest thing I'll say about this is they are the same brand, so I know they're totally fine, but obviously you can see these are a lot shorter. So I will have to cut these down because you want to make sure that when you're building your arrows that everything is the same. I'm not crazy into the science behind arrows, but I will say that you definitely don't want any more weight on the back end than necessary. So these are for sure too long. So I'm going to cut them the same length as these just to keep everything the same. So that's the only thing. So they'll pretty much end up looking like that, which is totally fine. The biggest thing I want them for is just to be able to see any blood and what type of blood I get from my shots. So that's the wraps. And then I've got the AAE Air Razor 26s. These are new this year. The last veins that I used were the hybrid 23s, I believe. So they're a little bit longer, a little bit fatter, just to kind of help with steering. I'm gonna be potentially making a little bit farther shots at an elk this year than what I would a whitetail. So I wanted a little bit of extra steering There really isn't that big of a difference, truthfully. The only thing is I'm gonna do a 3 fletch instead of a 4 fletch like I did previously. And then I've just got some Victory components and, you know, fletching glue, insert glue. This is what they come with. So the arrows that we're shooting, you know, getting down to the nitty gritty, the good stuff here, you guys wanna know, this is the Victory VAP. These are actually the micro diameter, so they're 4mm. They are a little bit thinner than like your average, you know, standard size, which would be 5mm. So I've always shot the 5mm. This is the first time I'm trying the 4s, so I'm curious. So far they seem like really solid, truthfully. If you're shooting anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds, 500 spine's about where you want to be. So after that, the diameter, it just more so depends on the stiffness of the arrow. These are definitely going to be a little more solid than what my previous ones were, so I'm essentially going to get a little more penetration with the smaller diameter. We're going to find out. Obviously, I haven't shot anything with them yet, but I shot them all day yesterday, sighting my bow in, and they seem super solid. They're flying really awesome, so I'm really excited to try these. So yeah, Victory VAPs, 166 micro diameter, 500 spine, and they come with a 50 grain outsert, and then I'm gonna have 100 grains up front. So I will weigh these. I'm not sure what they are exactly. I forget what they ended up coming out as, but we'll weigh them once I build the new ones and do some shots out of it. So I'm really excited. The last thing I wanted to mention are what I'm putting up front and what I'm putting in the back. So we've got, I'm probably gonna run some 4-blade slick tricks this year. I've shot these in the past and I love how sharp they are. I don't really dedicate myself to any particular broadhead brand, truthfully, just because, I don't know, there's just so many different things you can tinker with and mess around with and try. So I'm just gonna go with these just to try them for this setup. They're super sharp, I know that, but other than that, I really prefer a 4-blade personally because I like the hole that they make versus just a 3-blade that kind of slices. These have a harder time sealing up, so I prefer 4 blades if you can get them flying correctly. So Slick Trick is what I'm running this year. I ran Rex, the FX4 last year, actually the last 2 years. So really any 4-blade is gonna do you good. And then on the back end, because they're a micro diameter, I had to try new nocks this year, so Halo. I truthfully don't know much about them other than they activate when you clip onto the string. They're obviously just clipping on, but then when it shoots, they turn on, and to turn them off, you actually have this little knob on the side, so you put it back on your string and then just hold this down and pop it back off, and that'll stay off, which I think is nicer than having to like dig a knife or like a little point in like some of the others you have to do to just get them turned off. But there you have it. Victories, let's get them fletched. For the sake of time, I'm just gonna do 3 arrows. Obviously, I'm gonna build more than that, but just because it takes so long, I don't wanna run the time up. So this is what it looks like, taking the outserts off. What you're gonna do when you cut is you're gonna leave the nocks in that they come with, and you're gonna cut them that way. So you wanna make sure you're measuring the actual carbon and not any components or anything when you're measuring your arrow. So my arrows are cut roughly 25.5, I believe. My draw length is 25 inches, so I think these are about 25.5. There's kind of like a general rule, I guess, where you want to cut them within an inch probably of your draw length. I personally like to run mine just a touch longer. Not too long, because when you add components like an outsert or something, it can definitely make your arrow extra long. But I like to have them a little bit longer just because I don't like the feeling of having my arrow and broadhead so close to my hand. And I don't shoot with my fingers out. I don't recommend doing that, but if you are somebody who does that, just definitely keep that in mind. Like, don't slice your hand. So I cut mine, I think, about 25.5. We're gonna measure them here really quick and I didn't really adjust much, but yeah. Yeah, 25.5. So that's what we're gonna run with. So yeah, let's cut them. And I will say, I wanna make note of this. When you are cutting any carbon, like arrows, please wear have a ventilation system, wear a mask, do something. We all lived through the great epidemic. So I know you have a mask, please wear it because this is dirty, this is nasty, and it will get in your lungs and your system and it won't come out. So just be safe about it. I'm gonna open the door, wear this mask when I'm cutting. So just as a little tidbit if you decide to do your own. So we've got our arrows cut. And what's cool about Victory is they're the only arrow brand to source their own carbon. And they're very particular and I really appreciate that. Like you can see here in the carbon that right till about here, this is just raw etched carbon. And then they have, I guess they call it ice technology, where they have this like coating on the rest of the arrow, so it's easier to pull out of targets. It makes it a little more slick, so that way it's not sticking in your target so much, especially if you do have a heavier draw weight behind your arrow. So I thought that was really cool. This is good just because of putting vanes and wraps on the end of your arrow. So what we're gonna do is pop these, we're gonna pop these nocks out of here because I shoot lighted nocks. If you don't shoot lighted nocks, or if you legally can't shoot lighted nocks, that's totally fine. You can leave those in there. They come out pretty easy. And then what we're gonna do is, actually I think these are the only nocks I do currently have, so I might pop these ones into my arrow. You can use pliers, just don't squeeze too hard. You don't want to damage any of the internal parts. When you're putting wraps on, it's nice to have a mat of some sort. It's similar to like a mouse pad. For any of you youngins who don't use a mouse anymore, you might not know what that is. But it's just this like squishy pad to really be able to push your arrow onto the wrap. So what I'm gonna do is I have to be careful how I do this because on these, the Corbin's Archery logo was a little bit covered up. So I think I'm actually gonna flip them and make the logo of mine on the back end closer to the nock, because then you'll actually be able to see it with the vane. I think that looks better. And I think I like having the orange closer to the front too, because if I don't get a full pass through, this is more likely to have some blood on it than this end. So yeah, I think we're gonna do it this way. Just make sure the end of your arrow is clean. You don't want any like oils from your hands on there. And then you're just gonna take this guy. And because I want this on this end, we're gonna put it on the very edge of the mat. Literally just flip it upside down. And I mean, there's different ways you could do this. I just kind of eyeball it. Just line everything up. If you have an actual mat that is meant for this, there's gonna be a little like cutout that you can see where you're supposed to lay the wrap down. Okay. Careful. and seal that edge. And then you just roll it just like that. And then I take my hands and make sure everything's on there. Okay, it's not the cleanest one I've ever done, but I don't hate it. Although I will say, I think these are reps for 5mm arrows, so they kind of overlap a little bit, but I'm not gonna get that picky today. Okay, what do we think? What do we think? Pretty nice. I love it. Looks good. Okay, so this is what you're ending up with. I'm actually really excited about this. I think it looks pretty cool. It's really awesome to me to like be able to build my own things and then use them. Like, I don't know, I just think there's something special in that when you can do your own. I have a Bitzenberger and I have a left helical. The actual degree of it, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know what the degree would be, but this is kind of what it's pretty slight. But the reason I have a left helical is because Matthew's bows tend to prefer a left spin. You're gonna have to look at your specific bow brand to know exactly what helical works best for you. In the past, I've ran a straight fletch with my 4-fletch just because of space reasons, and I did not have any issues with it. You know, as long as you tune your bow properly, and your arrow's typically gonna fly correctly, but take that with a grain of salt. You definitely need to maybe ask a pro shop or experiment like I do and just see what works. This is what it looks like, and your actual clamp is gonna be curved as well. I do have straight ones for when I did a straight fletch. You can see the difference here. And there's different fletching jigs, like you can do all kinds of different stuff. This is just what I have had. Now we're gonna start by spine align. So Victory also has the spine align, which is super handy to make sure you're fletching all of your arrows the exact same. I guess I technically should have maybe wrapped them all the same, but that's not a huge deal to me. That's just if you are particular and you want everything to look symmetrical. But for the sake of making your veins the same, they have this line down the center, and you're gonna use your cock vein, which is your vein that sticks up in your bow, or out, I guess, depending on how you wanna angle it. But it's basically, you choose, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes people will do a different color for the cock vein, but you're basically gonna put that vein in line with your spine align. If you're doing a helical, it's best to kind of maybe do like the center, line that up with the actual line itself. But I personally don't know if it really matters. I think it just, as long as you have this relatively even with this line in some capacity, and then just do the same thing for each arrow. The biggest reason is because when you put your arrow in your bow, your side veins are gonna be close to touching your roller guard, and you don't want any disturbance. Obviously, you don't want your arrow to hit anything on the way out, so it's best to put this vein directly up or even outward, just to make sure that any space right here is what's gonna be facing the side of your bow. So hopefully that makes sense, but essentially you just wanna have clearance. It's also important to make sure that the knock that you fletch with is the same every time. So if you're gonna insert the new nocks right away, make sure you're doing that for all of your arrows. And truth be told, I might actually have to put these other ones back in because I don't remember. I'm gonna have to look at this actually. Yesterday when I did the other set, I had these nocks in for actually fletching. I have to do the same for these, so I needed to take the lighted nocks out because they do make a difference. You have to measure from the carbon, not the components, because as you can see, these are not quite the same length. So we're gonna just pop these orange ones back in just to put the veins on, and then we'll switch them back out. Okay, so now is where the spine align matters. Okay, so we're gonna line this up, and obviously your knock can twist on the inside of your arrow, so we're gonna make sure everything lines up perfectly. You just want it to be sticking upright in some way, shape, or form, and then we're just gonna do like an experiment of, let me put a vein up to it. And then what I like to do is, this is just my personal, I don't know, I guess it depends what kind of vein you're using as to where you're gonna position it, but I typically just place these AAE ones on the very bottom line here. Okay, so we're just gonna do a little experiment, test run. And that looks pretty, yeah, pretty close to spinal line. If anything, maybe a touch inward. So for these particular veins, they're nice because you don't technically need a primer, but a lot of veins you do. So you would need a priming pen to just clean the bottom of this, basically. You can still do it, obviously, but you don't have to. I might do it just for the sake of like making sure they stay on. Okay, you're just gonna do one little swipe down the center. Let it dry for a second. And then actually what we'll do is put this on here. You can maybe do this part first. It's been a minute since I've fletched anything, so I'm kind of getting back in my groove. Okay, so while that's drying, what we're gonna do is grab some fletching glue. And you don't need a lot, really. Just, I kind of start like, I give a little teeny gap, and then I'll just do like little dots down the edge, because if you have too much, then it's going to come out the sides. And then you kind of just sit it down, and you're going to start bottom first, so you're going to press the bottom towards the arrow first, and then the rest of it. I definitely did too much glue. So we'll do this while it's sitting there. You got to do it kind of quickly, or it's gonna... All right, that's not the prettiest. Definitely did too much glue. Okay, so now I know next time I didn't even need that much. Anyway, we're gonna let it sit for a minute, dry out enough to take it off, and then we'll rotate it. I would just unclamp it, maybe. You guys, this is a test run. I really have been out of practice for a minute because I haven't really done new arrows in a year, so this one's not the prettiest. But anyway, you're gonna just rotate, and if you set this up right, it'll just automatically rotate to the correct distance between each vein. These are definitely more pink than purple, but I think it kind of looks pretty sharp. It's definitely not a fast process, so if you're gonna do your own arrows, give yourself time, because you're watching it pretty much in real time right now. Okay, so we're gonna do a little less glue. Space it out a little more, maybe. Same thing. The magnet's pretty strong, so it likes to really suck it. So you gotta be careful it doesn't like do too much here. And you slide the bottom first and then the top. And you gotta make sure your arrow is also seated pretty well into the bottom. So yeah, we're gonna do this and literally repeat the process. Now all we need to do are the inserts. All right, so I guess actually these are technically an outsert because they're going outside of the arrow and not inside. So with these, what we're gonna do is similar to prepping a primer on your veins. We're gonna do a primer alcohol swab on the ends of our components. You don't want them to come off your arrow, or if you are shooting a lot, you don't want them to pull out into a target or something. So kind of let them dry for a second. And then we'll do our arrows. We've got some Victory Black Fusion adhesive. Shake well. A little shaky shake.
And truthfully, I've never used this kind before. I've always done the old school where you melt the wax and do that whole thing. So I'm kind of excited to not have to do that because that's a messy and like, I don't know, it's just a long process to heat it up. And if you want to see that process, you can go watch my other videos, but this seems so much easier. I guess I should also maybe do the same thing. Let's do this with just the end of the arrow to make sure it's clean, because this particular outsert actually kind of slides down quite a ways. So we'll clean the arrows too. All right, so now we're just gonna apply, not overly thick, but good amount. Oof, all right. Just really twist it on there and then clean the excess. Okay. So we got 150 grains up front, 3 vein with the wrap in the back, and now is when I'm gonna swap out the nocks. Okay, and this is also where the spina line kind of comes into play. I always choose, obviously, that vein to have upright in my bow. And with these nocks, since the little button thing is just on one side, I want to keep that on like the side closest to me in case I need to turn it off or on for any particular reason. And this is the final product. The only other thing would be the broadhead, but obviously we're gonna not put those on just yet. I'm gonna practice, you know, we'll shoot with these. So let's weigh these babies. And as far as weight, as long as your broadhead is the same weight as your field tip, then you can just weigh them as is. Okay, zeroed out. Now we weigh. Make sure it's not leaning where anything's touching the table. Sometimes you gotta like counterbalance here. Okay. 347.4. I like to weigh them all just out of curiosity. I try to keep them 348. 348. Now there are little variations, and that could potentially just be the amount of glue that I put in. So if you're gonna be super particular, you know, you can obviously just really measure everything out. But as long as I'm within the same ballpark, I'm totally happy with that. So 348 is my total arrow weight.
All right, final product. What do we think? Thoughts and opinions in the comments. Be brutally honest, you guys typically are. I am happy with this. I am gonna build a whole lot more, obviously, but for time's sake, 3 is perfect. And I thought I was gonna shoot, but then I realized you guys haven't quite seen the bow yet. You're gonna have to wait till the next video to see that. So I don't wanna do any early sneak peeks, but these arrows are awesome. I was shooting them all yesterday and I got dialed in. We're ready to rock. Now it's just a matter of just shooting every day, getting ready for season. I am on the road in about 2 weeks, truthfully. So that's crazy to me that it's already here. So if you guys are building arrows, maybe this is one to consider. If you have a lighter setup like I do, I'm pulling 50 pounds with a 25-inch draw. So yeah, I'm really excited to use these. But there you have it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow in my bow build.